G'day folks. Have you ever wondered what the attraction is to catching the biggest fish in the river? I am going to use my mental health background to explain to you now why that works. This is going to blow you away. Rightio folks, our brains are very, very complex. They are made up of millions of little neurological pathways, and in our brain there are 4 glass jars that hold 4 hormones, or 4 chemicals I should say, that control our mood and the way we act and the way we feel. These are the 4 main chemical elements in our brain that give us different feelings. They are D.O.S.E, D.O.S.E, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin and endorphins. Now let me explain more. Dopamine. Dopamine is the feeling of euphoria. It's the feeling of results. It is the best feeling you can get. When something really, really good happens, your dopamine jar fills right up. When your team wins the grand final and you're that amped that you can't sleep at night, that's because the dopamine in your brain, the dopamine levels are through the roof. When something really good happens, if you're playing football and you kick 10 goals in one match, your dopamine's going to go up. In fishing, the best way to trigger an onset of dopamine, or a big build-up of the brain's chemical dopamine, is by catching the biggest fish in the river. If I catch a cod now that's 140 centimetres long, imagine the dopamine. That is what we try and stimulate in our brain when we target the biggest fish. And there are other ways to stimulate that, and I'm going to talk about that at the end. There are artificial ways to stimulate it that are very unhealthy, and I'm going to talk about that at the end of the video. But dopamine is the chemical in your brain that makes you feel that feeling of euphoria, and when you catch the biggest fish in the river, you have a major influx of dopamine. Your uptake or reuptake of dopamine in your brain is enormous, and you feel absolutely amped. Oxytocin is the hug hormone, or the happy chemical. That's the good warm feeling you get when you hold your girlfriend's hand. When you hug someone, your oxytocin levels go up. When you have sex, apparently, not that I would know, but apparently when you have sex, your oxytocin levels are at their highest, and that is why you feel so good when you have sex, and that's why you feel so warm and fuzzy inside when you hug someone. And that's oxytocin, not OxyContin. Some people call it OxyContin, but OxyContin is actually a pain relieving tablet, and a very, very strong one at that. Oxytocin is one of the 4 main jars of chemicals in your brain that controls how you feel, and that makes you feel nice and warm inside. Serotonin. Serotonin is your general feeling. At the moment my serotonin levels are quite high. I'm in a good mood folks. I'm happy, I'm out fishing in a spot that I love, I am relaxed, and that is why I go fishing, because I like to stimulate the serotonin chemical, or the serotonin element in my brain that makes me feel calm and relaxed, and that's what serotonin is, the general mood. Now a lot of people with depression and anxiety take antidepressant medication known as SSRI, which is selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. That artificially reuptakes the serotonin in your brain and just makes people with depression feel a little bit more relaxed and a little bit happier, and that's what serotonin is. And endorphins, the E in dose is endorphin. The endorphin that you release is a chemical that you release when you do a lot of exercise. When you go to the gym, for the gym jumpies, you lift all these weights, you feel that feeling of achievement, you feel like you've done something really good for yourself. That's endorphins, and there are other ways to trigger the endorphins. Eating lollies, and for me, eating chocolate. Chocolate is a great endorphin release. It's not a very healthy one, it's an artificial endorphin release, but it is an endorphin release. The healthiest way to release endorphins is to go for a long walk, go to the gym, or use some exercise. The healthiest way for me to have a healthy level of serotonin, make me feel happy, is by going fishing now, and that's what I go fishing for, to be happy, in my happy place and relax. The healthiest way to get your oxytocin levels up, go and hug someone. Go and hug your girlfriend, hug your sister, hug your nana, hug your mum. You can even hug me, but not if you're a male. I don't do man hugs very well. But let's get back to dopamine, because dopamine is the brain's chemical element that we want to trigger when we catch the biggest fish. And that is one of the reasons that we want to catch the biggest fish. We want that feeling of euphoria, that feeling of, yes, you beauty! That's the dopamine that does that to you. Another way to increase your dopamine is by using illicit drugs, ice, heroin, crack, cocaine, whatever you want to call it. That also increases your dopamine, which puts you on a high artificially. That's why you hear people talking about, he's on drugs, he's as high as a kite, because that's what the high is. The increased dopamine gives you a high. Getting a natural increase of dopamine, whether it's by kicking goals for your footy team, getting the king of the mountain on your mountain bike race, winning a running race or whatever, or catching the biggest fish in the river, that's a healthy way to increase your dopamine and get a natural high. To use crack or ice, any of those drugs, they've all got smack, whack, whack. To use illicit drugs to stimulate your brain to produce dopamine and give you an artificial high, because it does it artificially, what it does, it actually cracks the jar inside your head that holds the dopamine. So, next time you try and get that high of dopamine, it doesn't work. And then when you eventually seek help and you give up the drugs, you find it really, really, really hard to be happy. That's why a lot of people that use drugs suffer down the track, because they can't get happy and they get a lot of depression because their mood is generally down. It's because their dopamine cylinder was abused by the use of an illicit substance known as ice or crack or smack or heroin, or I don't even use any of them and I don't need to. When I want a high, I go fishing and try and catch a big fish. Dopamine, just remember that word. And if there's one message I want to put at the end of this video, and it is a serious message, particularly for the younger people out there, if you've got friends that are using illicit drugs and they want you to join in, for God's sake, grab your fishing rod and try and catch a 100cm Murray cod, because you'll get the same result, but you'll get it in a much more healthy way, and you'll even buy yourself a few bragging rights. Fishing is a much better way to release those happy hormones, folks, or those happy chemicals.